Hi, welcome to Space Couch. Um, I think we're live. I know that's the way that shows usually start with me going that, I hope we're live. Uh, but that's okay. That's okay. We're just going to do a little bit of that. How have you been? Uh, I've been real good. I've been real good. Uh, just sort of drifting through the outer realms here, and hoping I don't die. Uh, oh goodness gracious, we'll do just one of those. Oh, wonderful! I think this is gonna be uh, just fine today. Oh, great, 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 great. And do. All right, perfect. Okay, just takes a little bit of setup. I don't want to go careening off. My vector here. It really is great to see y'all. And let's just take a little bit of a time to take a look at our sponsor, which will be Tiger Squawk Digital, home of Tiger Squawk Records, with the new Mona Mur CD. Just got the test pressings. The new Mr. Zoth and the Were Spiders, Great Mortality. New Sighting, Serpentine is the single from Sugar Plum Suicide. More Mr. Zoth and the Were Spiders, Cosmic Dread. It's amazing. Tiger Squawk Digital also has Cedar Hill Furniture's Liquidation EP, and Roanoke, Virginia features the Gothicals on February 14th. Columbus C wants to know, do you think your father is proud of you? Yeah. I have a very good relationship with my dad. Weird question, but fair. So today's guest is someone who I am very excited to talk to. There will be a... we're just gonna do one of those, and perfect. And we're gonna find all about what's going on with this guest. And wo ist deine Mutter? Meine Mutter wohnt in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But enough from the peanut gallery today, because we are going to find out all sorts of wonderful information about our guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Muse. Oh, so many projects. What is going on, ma'am?
Hi, how's it going?
It is great to see you. I don't even know
Same.
where to start because there's so much I want to get into. Let's I guess let's just start with I always screw up the pronunciation. It's Siren or Siren?
Siren.
Siren. Let's get into Siren, which is your sort of one of your musical outputs.
Yes.
And in the world of electronic music, pretty singular. I don't know anybody that really does what you can do. Could you
Mhm.
describe Siren musically, conceptually, if you want? Like
Mhm.
if and like if your if this particular project was like a cartoon, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Okay.
I guess musically, I would describe it as ambient dark wave with a
Hmm.
couple of other influences like EBM and a little industrial and some classic electronica, and operatic vocals because, as you know, I'm a classically trained singer. So I
Yeah.
was just really wanted to experiment with, like some of my favorite soundscapes plus that training.
Hmm.
So that's how I would describe it. If it had to be a cartoon, that's a harder question. Uh, It would have to be an anime, I think, and it would probably
Okay.
have to be one of the more depressing ones.
Okay.
I think I would probably describe it as Angel Beats.
All
The
right.
Angel Beats is this really great anime about the afterlife, and
Okay.
it's a high school full of kids who have died and don't know that they've died. But it
Damn.
has a really, yeah, it's kind of dark. But the story is really great, and there's a lot of really great audio and music in it. So I think that's how I'd describe it.
Fantastic. Well, it's a lot of range, not only with your amazing vocal range being
Thank you.
classically or uh, operatically trained. I don't know a lot of um, opera vocabulary, so excuse me in advance if I misspeak. Uh,
It's okay.
but you can do this project available at sirenne.bandcamp.com. It You can do like the dance floor stuff. You can do the ethereal stuff. You really are not confined to any one style. Uh,
Thank you.
is that by design, or is that just sort of I'm sitting down at Cubase or Logic or whatever you use, and I'm capturing something that's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. In the beginning, it was very much non-intentional. Like I started the project in like 2005. So in the beginning, it was really just kind of experimenting with different sounds and seeing what I felt was really like my sound. So I do still like to have a lot of variety in each album. Like I always like there to be something dancey and something thought
Mm-hmm.
provoking and maybe something a little bit angry.
Hmm.
But I always try to have, something of a unifying thread in like the types of sounds that I use. And in the lyrics that I write for
Mm.
each album. So I'm still working towards creating something I view as a really cohesive sound.
Oh,
But I
really?
also, yeah, I also care a lot about personal growth in
Mm.
music. So I try not to make every album just a repetition.
Right. That's awesome.
Thank you.
For such a recognizable sound. That's interesting to me that you find it still evolving, which I think is great. I mean, why would you ever not do that? But it can be pretty easy to sort of freeze dry and push out in a style. But you're certainly
Definitely.
not doing that lately, and we'll get into that because some of your musical outputs have been even more crazy. But under
Yeah.
the branch of Siren, uh, you have an album out now on Tiger Squawk, woo, called "The Shadow of Avalon."
Hmm.
Um, could you describe this album? Um, Sorry, I just burped into the mic. As like a collection, as like a collection of uh, songs, or is there an overall sort of gestalt to it? What are your feelings on Shadow of Avalon?
Well, so the Shadow of Avalon is kind of about two things at once. It's principally about depression, but
Mm-hmm.
also about like a spiritual journey.
Mm.
Um, so the I don't want to get too much into like
Well,
dangerous
well,
territory,
I mean, we
but
can do whatever you
you know,
want, but like, I mean, it's a heady album. Like,
y-
there's a lot going on.
yeah, absolutely. I think that I wrote that album when I was going through a very dark period
Mm-hmm.
of my life, partly just because of what was happening in my life at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
partly because of like the current climate. Um, so it made everything that was happening made spiritual practice very difficult for
Mm-hmm.
me. And it made dealing with my depression
Mm-hmm.
extraordinarily difficult. And that's still true to a certain extent, but
Okay.
it's definitely gotten easier, partly through, continuing to write music. But it is a very cerebral kind of album. And it reflects a pretty broad emotional landscape. There's despair, there's reflection, there's some courage kind of at the end.
Mm.
But there's some anger in it too. And
Sure.
I felt like, when I was writing The Shadow of Avalon, I remember thinking that I wanted to make a conscious choice to reflect emotions that other people might find sort of uncomfortable, like anger. Like usually when I wrote angry songs before that, it was sort of by accident.
Mm.
But this time I made a conscious choice to
Mm-hmm.
write about things that really, really made me angry. Um, so there's a lot of really a lot of very dark and sonorous
Mm-hmm.
kind of soundscapes. There's a lot of like wavy kind of synths,
Mm-hmm.
and very heavy operatic vocals. And a lot of the lyrics are very dark. They're sort of dark but thought-provoking ideas. So I think what I really wanted to do as well is to kind of connect with the darkness that I saw other people going through for
Mm.
similar reasons, and to kind of conclude things in a way that said, we're going through this, but we're still here, and like
Mm.
things can get better, and let's try to get through it together.
Interesting.
So I like to think I was successful with that
Totally. Yeah,
message.
yeah. Well, it's very interesting to me if you'll allow me to be a little bit self-indulgent because I'm doing this, I've been doing the gossicles for like 20 years or something, and
I
that's
know.
songs about and which you have been a very successful contributor, but like the
Thank
reason
you.
I bring that up, and most of the songs are about like otters or video games or my balls, and it's just like it's it it's all silly, and I spent 2019. It's not out yet, but it's mostly done. This album called for this other side project called Gasoline and Vertebrate, and I'm like, and now
Mm,
I'm listening to like the demos of it, and these I don't know how I feel about it. Meaning, like I wrote songs about things that made me very very angry,
mhm,
and now I'm listening to that sort of that moment of my day captured, and I don't necessarily feel that way. But it's interesting to me to go back and examine how I felt then,
mhm,
and
mhm.
I don't know if I was successful or not. It's very interesting to me. Like it's capturing something so uh, I guess I'll say the word pure like that,
Mm.
and then going back and being like, this is exactly what was going on in my head, and now it's down for forever. What do you get out of that? Like, i- i- does it help you? Does it further the feeling? Are you happy to have that record? If you don't mind me
Um,
asking, because I don't
no, no,
know.
no. I don't mind at all. It's a
Mm-hmm.
nobody ever asked me that, so it's kind of nice to be asked. I think that when I think about music in that way, I think of it as almost a way of journaling my experiences and journaling my
Mm.
emotions, and to a certain degree, it kind of helps me chart my progress. Like you know
Okay.
I've lived with mental illness since childhood, and
Mm-hmm.
music has been the principal way through which I navigate a lot of the symptomology that I experience.
Uh-huh.
So it's a very good, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's not just like a coping tool, but it does sort of help me. It helps me measure how far I've come with certain ideas that I have, or certain issues that I've been working through.
Fascinating.
Um, yeah, like the Shadow of Avalon has a couple of songs about emotional trauma. So like
Mm-hmm.
other people that have hurt me very deeply. And writing that album kind of helped me process that. And now, when I listen to those songs, I can say, this is how I felt then.
Mm-hmm.
And I've overcome that feeling, and I can think about those experiences and not hurt anymore. So
Interesting.
it's sort of a reminder to myself that feelings are real,
Uh-huh.
but they can pass.
Okay. Cool. Because like some of the stuff, like I live in Boston now, obviously, and like there's a
Yeah.
track or two on there about how like like I don't know anybody here, nobody digs my shit, and I suck, and I'm a goof. And then but like I don't really feel that way anymore, but sometimes I do. It's an
No.
interesting like but like in terms of just carrying this idea of what you're saying of journaling it, like
Hmm.
I now have that record down. That's interesting to me. Well, speaking of uh, uh, externalizing emotions, let's say, we have this will lead into that. But as a bridge, I want to jump on this awesome video game music album you released,
Hmm.
Experimental Adventures in Video Game Music Volume 1. And like
Hmm.
that's so cool. Um, and obviously that this will lead into queenship stuff, but like
Hmm.
uh, the so you have this sort of collection of games that maybe out or not out or partially out, and
Hmm.
they come to you and they go like, we need X, Y, and Z song.
Yeah.
That I know in the case of open spaces, which we'll get into a bit, is supposed to
Hmm.
carry a very specific emotion, or we need this sort of thing.
Hmm.
How is the process of working towards sort of a prescribed goal, as opposed to like I'm going to sit down and write what's in my head? How is the we need a happy song or a noise track? Like how does that? How have you found that sort of onus?
It's man, it's difficult sometimes, but it's really interesting.
Hmm.
Because I mean, you can't. I personally have a really hard time writing music for games unless I can see pieces of it, like, show me some art or
Mm.
show me like, a scene that you've coded that is like functional so I can kind of like get a sense of the overall feeling of the game so I can write the music. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes somebody will just come to me and say, I have this idea for a game and I'm going to start coding it. Can you write some music? And just start
Mm.
concepting stuff. So all the games that I've composed for on that album, aside from Open Spaces, which is a finished release, are games from game jams that I've done.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're super fun. So game jam is where you get together and you build a working video game prototype in a set amount of time. It's usually a weekend.
Mm.
And there's a couple of kind of big ones, like there's Ludum Dare that's twice a year, and that's a big one. And then there's the Global Game Jam once a year, and that's actually next weekend. So I'm
Oh,
very excited.
wow.
Yeah. So
That's
yeah, you get a team together, or you can do it solo if you're skilled enough, and you build a prototype of a game. And sometimes they go on to further development.
right.
Sometimes they don't, but it's just a really fun exercise. It's a good way to get creative. So most of the pieces I wrote for that album were from game jams, and a couple of those games are still undergoing development. Some of them were just kind of standalone, like, oh, I did this for fun.
Mm.
But I got a lot of really good reviews.
Well, they're
like, oh,
great.
yeah, oh, thank
It's some
you.
of my favorite stuff, but
No,
I
thank
didn't
you
mean to
so
talk over you.
much.
You got some great reviews?
Yeah, I got some really good reviews on the audio landscapes that I did, and some of the pieces that I did. So I'm just like, yeah, I feel like I should just like throw these in an album and like give them to people if they want to buy one. And of course, like the game developers that I worked with are extraordinarily skilled. Like I worked with Taro Omiya from Omiya Games. That's here in Troy, New York,
Okay.
on a number of different games now. And he's really, really fucking good at what he
That's
does. He
awesome.
does everything except like music.
Well,
um,
it's funny you bring that up. I'm just sort of getting into that world a little bit because my fiance does UI art for a game that's coming out. Yeah, it's
nice.
really cool. So I'm learning about like these game jams that take place on the train to GDC and stuff.
Yeah, that's
So,
wild.
so do you the game jam like you're not there? They crack it out in a weekend and go like we need the best. Let's get Muse on this, or are you in the room?
I'm usually present for the game
Oh,
jams, although
okay.
you can do them remotely if you want to. Like, you
Hmm.
don't necessarily have to be on site. But if I'm going to be honest with you, Brian, usually people will come to me and say, write me some music, because half the time I'm the only composer in the room. So they'll just be like, can you write me some music? So I'll always end up like doing like two or three different games during a game jam, which
Wow.
is like, I mean,
That,
it's it's not as intense as like say coding for three different games. It's much less time consuming.
well,
Um,
you know, it a lot of music, especially electronic, is programming after a fashion, and
yes.
you gotta nail it. I mean, I'm sure you've spent an entire weekend trying to get a bass line right, and now it's like, okay, crank out 3 songs in an hour or whatever.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
so I mean, good on you. Let's go to um, Open Spaces because that's out. I've been playing this a little bit and love it. It's for you, the listener. It's a story-based game about nominally agoraphobia, but other issues come in, and boy, do they come in! I was expecting, not expecting, but it would have been an easy thing to do to be like, uh, and then Susie took the magical medication, everything got better, you won the end,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't do that. It's there's a process to it, and it's not a game you win. Like we can help, but
Right.
there's this it's very real. Um, there's parental issues and transgender issues, and I was
Mm-hmm.
just so impressed. Not only with the game itself, but this track, and not just because I'm a sucker for noise, but I had only heard you do these. Superstar David Colchin is here. I'd only heard you do like these sort of the beautiful like siren or mermaids with manticore stuff, and then you bust
Yeah.
out this dope ass angry robot noises track.
Yeah.
This is Open Spaces. We're just gonna cut to this. So Muse, you won't be able to hear this, but we can talk over it. So this is obviously when a character undergoes a stressful situation, it'll cut to this track sometimes. And uh, right now we're seeing a transgender woman deal with agoraphobic situations, and this captured this captured because there's like alarms going on in the song, and it captured this idea of like time is going away, and okay, I'll do this an hour, I'll do this in half an hour, and now I'm out of time, and the bizarreness and the tension of your song. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but like for me, it amped up the feeling of anxiety so well. Was that sort of the intent, or was there something else going on there?
Like really heightened anxiety or panic
Hmm.
is like a spiky kind of feeling.
Spiky.
Yeah,
That's the
so
word.
it's that's really the best way I can describe it. So I wanted to write, a song or like a landscape that really kind of evoked that feeling. Like it's very kind of sharp and stabby and
Hmm.
unpredictable and bizarre and difficult to escape.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, no, that was very very
Okay.
very deliberate. And all the other pieces in the game, I tried to write pieces that I felt really reflected the individual personalities of each
Mm.
character. So like every character has their own theme, and there are a couple of like site specific themes that we included.
Did you do all the
um
music? Oh,
yeah,
you did
yeah,
all of that. Okay.
yeah, I wrote the whole
Because
soundtrack.
there's only three
Kind
songs. There's three tracks on experimental adventures in video game music. So I was looking for those specifically. I didn't know you did all of it. It's beautiful. It's really really good.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah, the Queenship actually does also have a Bandcamp, and the full soundtrack for Open Spaces is available
awesome.
on
Is that
Queenship's Bandcamp. So yeah,
Queenship, like Queenship Studio or QueenshipGames.bandcamp.com?
it's queenshipgamestudio.bandcamp.com.
QueenshipGameStudio.bandcamp.com. What she said. Get on it. It's really great. And yeah, there's these beautiful sort of vocal pieces and piano pieces, and then I I'm a little industrial boy at heart, so I sort of went to the gnarly digital noise stuff.
Of course. No, it's just perfectly fine.
No, it's great. Yeah, the all the characters and you we need that's got to be like a trip, I would imagine, for somebody to say like, okay, we need a piano theme that compasses the agoraphobia of a non-binary college student.
Mm-hmm.
What? Okay. I guess, and then you nailed it. But it
Thank
seems
you.
like a tall order. You have to be pretty proud of this one.
I am. It was, because I've been working in game development for a little under 2 years now, and it was Open Spaces was the first full soundtrack that I ever
Hmm.
wrote. So like, I'd written like, smaller groups of pieces for other games, but never like a, 12. I think the Open Spaces album has maybe 14 tracks on it. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I was I was really happy to have been able to do that on my own.
Awesome.
But it required a lot of careful thought and analysis, and just choosing the soundscapes very carefully. But I'm really glad to hear that it worked.
Fantastic.
Um,
No, it really did. It
so
really did. Um,
thank you.
well, I'm now wildly curious about some of the and believe me, I know NDAs, so let me know if you can't mention it. But like, there's games listed on that album called like Hachi Block and Chimera,
Mhm.
and is that just upcoming from Queenship then?
No. So except for Open Spaces,
Mm-hmm.
all the other games that I wrote for on Experimental are from other game studios.
Mm-hmm.
I did retain the rights to the music I wrote, so I'm able to release
Okay.
it. But Chimera was sort of a sort of a fun little body horror type of game
Oh,
that we did for
cool.
yeah, it was super fun. So basically, like, you got to run through this maze,
Mm-hmm.
and you collect body parts because
Awesome.
you need a certain number of body parts to open the doors to get out of the maze.
Mm.
So it's a really weird game.
That's
So I had to
pretty.
write a very weird soundscape for it.
Oh, goodness gracious! Science fiction is in the room. What's up, buddy?
Yeah.
Um, the uh, and I want to circle back to this because it's kind of fascinating. Because, like I said, I'm getting a little bit of a behind the scenes, just in my life into the game world. And Queenship is an all lady studio. Yeah,
Currently, yeah.
currently. Okay. Well, I
We
mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but
No, totally fine.
yeah,
So it is a female founded
female
game
founded.
studio.
Okay.
So starting out, it was all women,
Mm-hmm.
both cis and trans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's three of us currently. We're still sort of in the market for a Unity programmer or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of a separate thing. So, but basically, like, our purpose is to create games and gamify tools that can help people both learn about and manage the symptoms of
Mm.
mental illness.
That's
Um,
really cool.
yeah, thank you. So, in full disclosure, everybody on the team has um, at least one neurological or
Uh-huh.
mental disorder, which kind of makes us almost uniquely equipped to deal with these kinds of issues. Like, obviously, we've done a lot of research on the clinical side. We've
Mm-hmm.
we've read, the relevant DSM entries. We've talked to, mental health peer advocates and psychologists and
Mm-hmm.
social workers to make sure that we're, like, depicting things appropriately. Um, but the best feedback we've really gotten has been from people who have played the game and been helped by it.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we've demoed it at a bunch of different conventions. We demoed it at Genericon, at Empire Game Expo,
Cool, cool.
a couple of others, and almost universally, everyone who's played it says, I have one of these disorders and I've learned
Uh-huh.
something about it, or I have a loved one or a friend, etc., that has one of these, and I've learned how to help them. So I'm just like,
Right.
yes, that's the best. Oh my goodness.
Well, I mean,
Um,
let me um I'll do this in a way that doesn't project, I hope, but I was playing through the game with the Chinese guy, and at one point you have the option to call your dad, and I'm
mhm.
thinking like, oh, this is obviously what you're supposed to do, and it's not it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't he doesn't help. Your dad doesn't help, and my
Right.
dad's great, but like that with family sometimes that's not the case, and I was just like, wow, they're making this really real. Like sometimes you're on your own, and that
Yeah.
that just knocked me on my ass. Um, Shout out to you, Dad, if you're watching. But it's just no, it's check that out. I won't make the whole interview about queenship. I'm like so much is coming together for me just by way of explanation because I've always had a soft spot for indie games.
Thank
I
you.
like you and I like industrial music, so this is kind of like a triple threat
Right.
to me. Let's address the elephant in the room. Holy shit, London!
Yeah.
Goodness gracious! So spill it, girl. Like, were you just why now? How?
Well,
Or if you
so
don't, I mean,
full.
we don't have to get say what you want. You're comfortable saying.
No, 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 totally fine. It's a whole thing. So I've lived in Europe twice prior to now. I've
Oh,
lived
really?
in Finland and I've lived in Germany.
Hey, hey.
And I've always wanted to go back to Europe. Like I love it there.
Hmm.
I have friends there. Um, it's a really wonderful place to be in. And London in particular, as you know, has a really vibrant art scene,
That's great.
and there's a ton of indie game developers.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, it's a really wonderful community across like everything that I do. But admittedly, part of my reason for leaving is because like the United States is just falling to shit, and
Why before do you think? I'm kidding.
right. But no, I mean, to be honest, part of my reason for leaving is because like every time I left the house, I worried about getting shot, and I was just kind of tired of it.
Shit.
So I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go somewhere where nobody has an AR-15.
True.
And I started thinking about London because I have friends there, and obviously I speak the language, so it'd
Right.
be like less difficult to sort of assimilate. So yeah, I moved in early December, and it's going spectacularly well. Like I love it as a city. I'm making new friends.
You're in
I've
Troy as we
I've
speak, but you're going back to London soonish.
tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for taking the time.
No, of course.
Okay, great, great, great. So, I let me ask you this because I'm curious. There was a second where, before my fiance got the dope Boston gig, she had an offer from a place in Scotland, and
Oh.
so I was looking to like, fanciful, hypothetical, what if I moved to Scotland type stuff, and
Mhm.
like everything on the internet said like you can't. Like in a post-Brexit world, it's not like even if you get whatever visa or teach or you can't do it. So like, did are you just that dope that they're letting you in or what?
Well, all right. So immigration is like a whole thing,
Uh
even
huh.
Brexit aside. So right now I'm on the tourist visa. So if you're an American, you can go on the tourist visa for like 6 months. And after that, you have to have like a regular visa, like, for work or school
Oh,
or if
okay.
you get married, anything like that. So what I'm hoping to do is get a what's called a Tier 1 sponsorship visa. It's an
Hmm.
entrepreneurial visa for my game studio.
Oh, awesome.
Um, so that's sort of what I'm working on
Synergy.
right now. Yeah.
Awesome. 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 Awesome.
But shh, don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody what.
uh,
We haven't been talking about anything. What are you talking about?
Right, I know, right? So it's difficult. It is not impossible.
Okay.
It's definitely helpful if you have a degree in something. Most of the jobs that will sponsor you for a visa require like, a bachelor's. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can get away with just having like an associate's if you're really
Mm.
skilled at something. But if you have a master's degree or higher, it's really, really easy,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you practice an occupation that's on the shortage list. And they actually
Oh,
just expanded that list. Um,
I was not aware
so
of that.
I'm because of all these things, I'm sort of cautiously optimistic because I have
Cool.
I have a college degree. I practice 3 occupations on the shortage list, and
Nice.
there's like a bunch of potential. I think there's like 2,200 companies in the UK that provide visa sponsorships of various kinds.
What?
So yeah, it's difficult. You will pay out the ass unless the organization agrees to like pay it for you or like, just dock your pay a little bit while you pay it off.
Hmm.
So it's expensive and it's difficult, but it's by no means impossible. So yeah, don't
Cool.
don't let them fool you about that.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, like I've been lucky enough to have some gigs and stuff over there, so I'm not unfamiliar with it. But it would be
Yeah.
cool to spend a fair amount of time there. So, uh, I know you'd been in Europe prior, but like, what if someone's going to England or even you? Like, what are some of the first things you notice outside of like the accent?
Oh, so a thing that surprised me the first time I went to London was that it is way cleaner than everyone tells you it
Okay,
is.
all right,
I mean, like obviously it's a big city, so you're
right,
like you're gonna see rubbish, garbage here and there.
right.
But it's fairly clean. The transit is
It's really
amazing.
good.
It's really, really good. Like one of the best parts is, so if you go out drinking on the weekends, and a lot of people do, they go out drinking and
Uh-huh.
clubbing and all that. The underground trains run 24/7
So
on
good.
Fridays and Saturdays, and there are night buses like every day of the week if you're out late. So no matter where you are or how drunk you are, you can get home. Um, Let me think. Londoners are definitely more polite than New Yorkers as a general rule, unless you're at the supermarket. Then everyone's just
That's
kind of
true.
a dick for some
Okay.
reason. I don't even know why. But one thing that is very true about British people is they do drink an awful lot of goddamn tea.
Okay. All
The
right.
weird part is that there's a ton of coffee shops, but not a lot of tea shops. And I
Interesting.
found that very curious. I'm like, okay,
It just sort
I
of
drink more
ambiently
coffee than tea,
occurs.
so
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, exactly. So it's weird. So those are the things I noticed right away.
Okay. I'll throw in this because I'm 12. The the here if an apartment is available, we'll say it's for rent, and
Okay.
overseas it's to let. So there's these big signs everywhere that say to let, which I just read as toilet. Like there's toilets everywhere.
I mean,
uh,
that's see now every time I pass a to let sign, I'm going to think of you saying that. You ruined everything.
ruining it for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, and then now that I mean, you were there for a bit, you're back for a tick. What is sort of anything you're sort of having to realign now that you're back on the east coast of these United States?
Oh man, so Americans are so loud.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I mean, if there's a soccer game on, to be fair, the British people can certainly
Oh yeah,
make
no, no,
some
no,
noise.
no, no arguments there. They are very enthusiastic about soccer. But no, it took me a minute to kind of get used to just how loud Americans are
Did it
in
really?
general.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and also everyone walks really slow in
Really
comparison with everyone in London. Yeah,
interesting. Even in New York.
even in New York City, like I flew into JFK
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, I'm trying to like muscle past
Right.
all these people
Huh.
that are like going somewhere. And I'm just like, we're at the airport. And then it happened again at the subway station. I'm just like, what is this?
Oh, that's fun. That's
It was
hilarious.
hysterical.
Okay,
So
because
yeah, that kind of struck me almost immediately upon returning. It was very weird.
yeah, I am one just a hair's breadth away from WWF suplexing people on that people mover thing. Like, I have to make
Yeah.
my connection in 6 minutes. Everybody move. But
Right.
now I know. Maybe when we the Gothicals to a Resistance Festival, we'll be a little bit more at home. Interesting. I'll have to watch for that.
Definitely.
And I know it's the hackest thing in the world, but like, I last time I was in Great Britain, I took a taxi cab, and it took me a while to stop white knuckling, just because everything's on the wrong side. Like, I'm just trained to not careen headlong into oncoming traffic, and the guys, I mean, they've seen it 1,000 times, but like,
Hmm.
it really is like a fair ride for a second for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no, it's true. Everyone in London drives like a dick, like no matter what. But you know what really kind of baffles me about living in London is why anyone drives at all.
what do you
Like
mean?
you do not have to own a car
Mm,
to get anywhere you want to
yeah.
go. Like you can even get to the city outskirts, which is like sub-rural without
Mm,
needing to drive. So it's just like if you live here, why? Like
yeah.
I don't understand. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I hear
so
that.
yeah, they're not great drivers, and obviously it's a very weirdly constructed city. It's not well planned. The streets are too narrow. Like it's It is what it is, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's great. It's like
Oh, yeah, it's great.
we'll probably just hit the real touristy stuff when we're there, but looking forward to it. And
Definitely.
so, you're doing music stuff abroad then? Like, do you have it all set up in your flat or whatever you're staying in?
Alas, no.
Okay.
So I've only lived there for a couple of months now, so I'm still sort of getting my bearings in terms of like how the music scene there works.
Hmm.
I'm hoping to play some shows as the release of Prototype gets closer. I'm hoping to release Prototype later this year. Knock on
What's
wood.
release prototype? What's that? Like of a
It's
game?
it's the it's the new Sirenne album I'm working on.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Space Couch exclusive prototype. Um, let's get into that.
Sure.
Sorry, I asked you a question and then talked over my own question. So you're hoping to get prototype out later this year.
Hmm.
Okay, and to that end, you're getting that going in your London space or what?
I'm trying.
Okay.
It's mostly. I think most of what I really need to do is just like start showing up to club events and talking to people. But I've been, like I moved and then it was the holidays and like
Right.
suddenly it was January and then I was planning for like, the work trip back to New York and now I'm
Hmm.
just like I really need to get like on this whole
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, but like I have a couple of contacts. So that's very helpful. So I'm hoping to start playing shows again.
Awesome. Awesome.
At least by the fall.
Very
So
cool.
I sort of miss it.
Awesome. So, uh, I mean, we've done some live stuff
I
with your
know. I miss
wonderful
that too.
the Mermaids versus Manticores track.
I love that
It was well,
song.
I sent it to How Job to be produced, and I'm like, this is a song where I do Suicide Commando and my friend does opera, and we pretend to be mermaids and manticores fighting, and he's just like, Brian, okay, sure, fine, fine. uh,
That's great.
yeah, and then I saw him later. I'm like, thank you. You somehow made our crazy voices work together. And he goes, it
Yeah,
was a
no, he
very
did a great
difficult
job.
mix. Yeah, he gave me this look like, yes, it was very hot. But yeah, did a great job. But so you do some live play. You're looking forward to a little bit more live play. Is it just you, or do you want to play with the band? How do you envision that happening?
I've had a lot of people ask me like why I don't play with a band.
Uh huh.
And I honestly, I think it's just because I'm a very greedy human being.
Well,
Like,
that's
if I do everything myself, then I get the whole paycheck when the gig is over. So it's just
it's
like,
you're
But
not
I
wrong.
mean, I do sort of try to keep things a little bit minimalist. I
Hmm.
think, like both when I'm recording music and kind of on stage.
Hmm.
Um, so as of yet, I haven't, at least with that project, I
Hmm.
haven't run into something I really want to do sound wise that
Hmm.
requires me to have like other people on stage. So like I love collaborative performances,
Sure.
like the ones that we've done.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just
No, I
haven't
mean,
needed it yet.
I advocate that personally. Like, I think you said it great. You haven't run across anything you need a band for yet. I think that's very astute. Where it's like, if I can do this with a few pieces of gear and not take a 9-hour sound check, like,
Right.
let's do that. Um,
Exactly.
so let's talk about this for in as much as you want to, because I don't know if you want to play it close to the vest, but prototype. We have
Mhm.
a new album coming up. How you feel about it? Is it carrying the torch from Avalon, or is it an entirely new feeling to it? What do you think, or what could we expect from the upcoming prototype?
A little bit. So when I started concepting the new album, the working title was originally Provocateur,
Okay.
and I had sort of a specific soundscape in mind for that album. But when I sat down to write the music, I realized like this is not the album I'm writing.
Interesting.
I'm writing something different. So a lot of the music that I started writing and a lot of lyrics I started writing was kind of more. it was a little more introspective.
Hmm.
So but it was really, it started to be about like a recognition of like a complete self,
Hmm.
you know.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's very about like, you know, internal unification and sovereignty and like, you know, feminine power.
Mm.
And it's a little bit political too. Like
Hmm.
one of the topics I address is rape culture
Hmm.
essentially,
Uh-huh.
and you know, and how much that affects us. One of the things that I've had a difficult time with over the past couple of years is, you know, that sort of behavior really kind of affecting our scene.
Hmm.
And I've had a lot to say about it. A lot of people have had a lot to say about it, but I haven't really heard a lot of music that's exploring that topic.
Interesting. Okay.
So, you know, in our scene specifically. So
Right.
I'm just like, you know, I really kind of want to comment on this.
Hell yeah.
Um,
Like if you got something to say, like yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I mean, you know, it's one thing to like have conversations with people or like make
Uh-huh.
Facebook posts, but I feel like commenting on something musically or artistically is a much more powerful statement. So that's one
Totally.
I kind of want to make. So yeah, it's turning into a very interesting album. It's turning out to be a lot more ambient than I had originally intended, but like with some really like heavy beats going on.
Mm. I love
And
it.
I feel like the vocals are going to be a little more contemporary in style this time. Like I'm
Interesting.
probably not going to use as much, you know, heavy operatic style. This is going to be a little, but not a ton.
Sure, sure. Okay, awesome. Awesome, awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. And you're you're feeling 2020-ish for that? Is it a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm hoping.
Uh,
It absolutely just like early 2021, but
mhm.
I'm gonna aim I think for probably late October.
Yeah, I mean, I I wrote the book on I went back to an old side project website, and it said
Mhm.
rebooting 2018. Ooh, ooh, okay, all right. I missed the mark on that one, but no,
It happens.
I think that's great. Like
Thank you.
I was talking, I had was nice enough to have Amon or Damon or however you pronounce that triangle on the show, and they were talking about like yeah, like it's we get asked a lot. I'm paraphrasing, but they say people ask if our music is political or why aren't we political, and they were like, you know, I think we are. And I said, you know, just because you don't have a lot of Trump samples doesn't mean you don't live in the world. Like, yeah,
Right.
there's you have an opinion on things, and I think that's great. And you know, Ego Likeness was on, and Donna was saying like.
Mm.
You know, I hope this album doesn't weird people out, but I've been going through some shit, and I'm like, that's great. Like, I would much rather have what's really happening, how you really feel, than like what rhymes with bat, like just
Right.
doing this sort of character. So
Yeah.
I love that you're tackling like you know rape culture. It's this wow, okay, a million things are coming into my mind, and let's just you know, if not musically, then what else? I think like
Right.
that's how I
Right.
like to even tie it back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's you know we're going to examine thoughts and um, music to me is very emotional and it's a very emotion heavy topic. So we're going to maybe journal emotionally. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just sort of
No,
spitballing.
it
Okay.
absolutely does. Although, you know, I'm thinking about what you were saying earlier about the gothsicles, like, you know, just being really silly and it's
Yeah.
about like video games and balls and stuff. And like, you know, I had somebody ask me, like, why do you like the gothsicles so much? And I'm just like, dude, everybody needs to laugh.
Yeah.
Like, especially now.
Well,
You know, so like your music has always made me laugh, and because I'm a huge video game nerd, it tickles my
well,
fancy.
thank
So
you.
like it's needed. You're welcome.
Well, I mean, and I'll tie it into to kind of the way you're describing prototype coming soon is for me like I just wasn't motivated for many years to sit down and uh, write about personal problems or whatever, like
Mhm.
loving otters or thinking mermaids are cool. Well, that's just what was in my heart at the time,
Right.
and I think that that's going to come across musically. And then I took 2019 off to
Mhm.
do this Gasoline album because I my heart wasn't in it. Like that's
Right.
why there's not a lot of new Gothical material right now because I didn't want to sit down and be like, well, people like Pac-Man. Here's a Pac-Man song. Like just kind of soullessly churning it out. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
so back to what you're saying, where it's like this may not be a super fun or even popular or even marketable, if that's a word to use,
It
topic right
is.
now. But
Mhm.
look, this is how I feel about it, and it would be dishonest to not put this out. Uh,
Right.
the 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 open spaces stuff,
Mhm.
uh, especially the noise track.
Mhm.
Technology wise, was that the same sort of platform you used for Shadow of Avalon, if you don't mind me asking?
Do you mean did I use the same tools?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because it
S
it
Go
really
ahead, I'm
sounds like
sorry.
you like I like Shadow of Avalon a lot, but you're just doing stuff that I'm not hearing on Shadow. So like I'm wondering how much you learned in between those two albums.
Well, I'll tell you a secret.
Yeah.
I started a new music project
Ah.
to my peril, probably, called Black Heartbeat.
Okay.
And I found myself really wanting to write like very, very heavy
Okay.
industrial. So I have no idea like when the first album is
Okay.
coming out. It's kind of like a very side thing right
Oh.
now.
Oh,
But
you're
I've
well. You're
really,
you will get no argument for starting a side project from me.
I know.
I'm so excited. And hello to Rocky Balboa official 9090.
So yeah, I've been really experimenting with writing that kind of heavy industrial, and
Mm.
it's fun.
It's great. Yeah.
No, it's super fun because it something I'm finding is I'm able to release like a lot of really aggressive feelings when I
Mm.
write that kind of music, and I'm just like, yes, this makes me feel like a certified badass. I want to do it some more.
That's really
You know?
cool. That's
Yeah.
so often I see and let me know how you feel about this. The female role in industrial is like I'm gonna come in as mean, and I know we kind of did this literally, but like I'm super mean man, and you're super like beautiful lady, and but like you can do it both. Like it doesn't, you don't
Yes.
have to do one thing. I think that's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Um, what so if somebody out there in the world wants to start as in electronic music, where do you think they should go or do or what might you start?
Hmm. I feel like I want to start with something kind of practical.
Hmm.
So if you should definitely try to familiarize yourself with a couple of different creation tools. So, like, a decent DAW and maybe like a
Hmm.
sound editor type of program like that. And which one you choose can wildly depend on what your budget is.
Right.
Like if you have like a couple of $1,000s to invest in like, a DAW and some equipment, then great. But like most of us don't.
Right.
Um, there's a number of really good DAWs on the market that are either free or very inexpensive.
Hmm.
Like I started out using Sony Acid Pro
Really
years ago, yeah, when it was
nice.
still free, and now I wound up paying for the license for Acid Pro 10 many years later. I think I paid like 80 USD for it. But
Acid
it's so
Pro. I
it's
haven't thought about that in a long time.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Magix owns it now. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's a subsidiary of Sony or if they sold it to a separate company, but
Well,
either way, it's
used to
like a
be
really good
Sonic
piece of
Foundry
software.
from Madison, Wisconsin, but
Oh yeah,
okay. Sorry, I talked over you because I got excited about
that's
Acid
totally,
Lips, but
they are great. They are lovely people.
word.
So yeah,
But
absolutely. But
go
yeah,
on.
so there's a ton of free tools that you can use on the market. I would suggest picking one or two and just getting like really good at them before you
Hmm.
try something else. And like ask. ask people,
Mhm.
like go to
Yes.
go to shows that involve electronica, or electronic type of music. It could
Mhm.
be anything, like classic electronic or industrial or dark
Mhm.
wave or goth industrial. It doesn't really matter, and just ask people questions about the
That's
kind of
awesome.
stuff that they do. Yeah,
That actually took me a while to figure out that you can just
yeah,
ask
me
people,
too.
because there's this, for me at least, like if I go see, let's say, a punk band, I
Mhm.
can see that guy playing the guitar and I can see that guy yelling into the mic and I can see those drums and I get it and I see those sound sources. And with industrial music, it's like I see a guy with eye makeup and a badass jacket and this music just sort of happens by magic. So it's
Right,
like this idea that like I'm ethereally bringing forth this from my being. How can you ever delve into the soul of how it's created? No, you can just ask that dude. Like you can totally
right.
just ask that guy or gal. Um,
Absolutely.
that took me a while to figure out,
Absolutely.
so I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think the other important thing to think about is like, what's the vision that you have of your sound? Like, what artists do you really love
Hmm.
that whose influences you might want to incorporate? Something I used to do. I used to play in a metal band,
Nice.
and something yeah, it was super fun. But something I did was I would make a continually evolving playlist of metal artists that I really really loved, and whose influence I wanted to incorporate into my own work. So that's a
Hmm.
good exercise. If you don't like to listen to music, I feel like that's sort of a non-starter anyway. you know. So
Yeah, I hate construction. How can I build a house?
seriously, it's exactly like that. What else? I think the last thing I would recommend is sort of broadly to not become discouraged by
Mm,
things. Like um, many years ago, I sent Stephen Archer an email about,
mm.
like gear recommendations because I really wanted to get serious about the Sirenne project, and like he knows a lot.
Yeah.
So he did, describe some gear that he would recommend,
Hmm.
at varying price points. But ultimately, the advice he gave me was it's not the gear, it's the will. Basically,
Yeah,
if
that's the sample.
you, and I've never forgotten that, basically, if you want to make something, you will figure out a way to make it and it will make you happy.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
so yeah, so every time I sit down to write an album, I think about that. Like I don't have a ton of fancy gear. Even now,
Uh-huh.
I have a better machine than I
Right.
used to. I have a better mic than I used to. But I've never really needed a ton to create the things that I cared about doing. So just ask
Yeah.
questions, look up some cheap starter tools,
Okay.
and just start dicking around, man.
Yeah, just start.
That's
I
all
mean,
it
yeah, just
takes.
start taking it around. We'll get the shadow of my dog's tail here on the couch. But that is great. Thank you. You can do a lot by will. Uh,
Absolutely.
I am on a rogue flight path here out in space. I know I said Boston before, but I'm totally in space. And we're gonna bring the ship on into the station. I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for
You're gonna
having
be
me.
going back across the pond
Woo.
in 6 seconds. But thanks for from catching us from Troy. Uh,
Absolutely.
the uh, you want to check out Sirenne .bandcamp.com or tigersquawkrecords.bandcamp.com for your appearances on a few wonderful compilations. Uh, Queenship Games, you guys, the title's $4. It's really, really great and sounds amazing. Um, uh, I mean, let's mostly for the soundtrack. Check it out. I'm kidding. It's all great. It's all great. It's all great. Um,
Thank you.
you want to look for what we're calling right now prototype out in the future, and anything else you want to sort of plug or closing thoughts or anything like that.
I no,
Awesome.
I've been extremely honored to be on the show.
Oh
I
well.
have I have caught several episodes, and it's always great.
Hey. Well.
So no, thank you for having me, and
Uh,
thanks to all of the folks who came in to watch the stream. So
okay. Yes. Big ups to. Oh yeah. Jack Hollingsworth says. he appreciates your advice. So, okay. And we're just going to this. So this is Space Couch for Sirenne, Muse, Queenship, out. And we're on the, hey, no problem. We're on the ending credits. So, yeah, looking forward to whatever you might have from London. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, the flashback to riding the train. It's really super
Right.
good stuff.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Bye.